we kind of grow up knowing things aren't quite equal.
It's still a problem, and it's always been a problem.
And I am much more concerned about what we're going to do about it than why it's happened.
But hopefully it is a reality we can actually change because it's one we created.
Now, earlier we heard from Maclean's editor-in-chief about why they decided to address the gender pay gap by releasing differently priced versions for men versus women in their latest issue. But now we're going to explore the issue itself. What can be done? The what's next is the question. Joining me now, Anne Kingston, senior writer with Maclean's, Catherine McIntyre, reporter with Maclean's, and Ishani Nath with Flair magazine. Let's start here. We know this is a problem. And the numbers, everyone's sort of stuck on the numbers, but we use that 26% as kind of an average because it's lower in some fields, higher in others, and you break it down even more. So let's get past that number right there and say, yes, this is an issue. What are we going to do about it? And I'm going to start with you, Catherine, because you helped conduct a poll about what a lot of Canadians, male and female, what their opinions are, and what are some of the standouts that you saw here?
So some of the things Canadians said in terms of what can be done about this, it was 82% of Canadians said that they would like to see stronger legislation on pay equity in order to help close the gap. So that was really surprising and really nice to see that people are receptive to finding a solution to this, and they think that there's one that could potentially help close it. Another thing that Canadians said was that they'd be open to exposing their salaries, so introducing the concept of pay transparency more broadly, if that were to highlight discrepancies in wages and help close the gap that way.
That's a very sensitive topic because you're always told, don't tell anyone what you make, right? And I know you've written extensively on this. The idea of transparency, how far can you go with your company? You're not going to put it up on a projector, I make this, what does my male counterpart make, but what could those steps look like?
Well, I think that absolutely we're talking about, I mean, it's A, we should be talking about it, and B, being very transparent. So I think it starts with A, understanding there's a problem, and also talking about just to one another. Just, you know, for people to talk within an organization and perhaps put pressure on an organization outside sort of the federal government or a union situation to just discuss what are you making and to advocate for a wider transparency, because that's where it starts. Right.
Let's talk about what's been in front and center in Hollywood. So the latest example, we saw Michelle Williams and Mark Wahlberg, and this story made headlines. Michelle Williams, they had to do a bunch of reshoots. Michelle Williams making, I think it was under $1,000 US. That was her per diem. That's what it totaled. Mark Wahlberg negotiated, or at least said to his agents, I want to make a little bit more. He made close to $1.5 million. Total backlash. And he ended up having to, I want to say there's probably a little bit of pressure there, to donate some of that money back. This is not just in the entertainment industry. And so the idea of speaking up, is that something that all of you have been seeing? Ishani, for you, when you're writing, is that a big factor here, that women maybe feel intimidated or aren't, when they are in the positions, aren't saying enough to get even higher, get more money?
I think it really comes down to we just don't talk about this at all, and so that's the first step. And one of the examples that I look at is Jessica Chastain and Octavia Spencer. They sat down and had a conversation about pay equity, and this recently broke that Octavia Spencer had to explain, listen, like, not all women are actually paid the same. Even within the women's sphere of things, people of color are paid even less. And so once that discussion was started, Jessica Chastain said, okay, well, that's crazy. So they actually tied their contracts together, and as a result, Octavia Spencer was able to make 5 times more than she was initially offered. So we can't actually take concrete steps until we start talking about the numbers.
Which is really important. So that's the first step, right? We're talking about it. Now what do you do? At what point do you say to HR or to your manager or whatnot, we need to do a little bit more? And a lot of employers are taking those steps proactively. But what do we do as a worker for Catherine and Anne?
What do we do as a worker?
Yeah, I mean, there's the conversation, but how do we make it happen?
Yeah, that's the tricky piece, right? If you don't know what your colleagues are being paid, it's hard to highlight if there's any discrepancy there. So I think that's the first step. And then what you do beyond that, you know, there are, in a lot of provinces, there are pay equity laws in place that are there to protect women and minorities and people with disability against discriminatory wages. So you can push those. So if you notice that you're being paid less than what you're worth, or than a male colleague who's doing a similar job, then you can take those cases to the Human Rights Tribunal, which is an onerous process. It's complex, and a lot of people think it's unfair that it's up to the employee to have to enforce that. But at this point, that's kind of your option.
It's kind of crazy, the steps and the hoops that we have to jump through to just get to where we should be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, solidarity is crucial on this issue, but the onus shouldn't be on the employee. I think that we're recognizing, I see the sort of the reckoning as being the accounting, which is what we're talking about now, as being the next phase of a larger systemic questioning of what's going on. And I think innovative companies will respond faster and quicker and recognize that this is a competitive issue as well. So it shouldn't just be how can I fix it?
What do I do? Yeah.
It should be should be on government, focus should be on corporations. It shouldn't it can't be just the workers with, you know, their placards
Picket signs
out
and
there. Yeah.
Okay, there's so much more to discuss, and that's why we're going to take this on to our second screen. So on our BT Facebook, please join in. You can use the hashtag #PayEquity or just tag us at BT Toronto, at City Melanie, and we'll continue this discussion right now. Thank you so much to you all. We're going up to you for now, Tim.